Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to Elizabeth Stiles, who is a fashion brand consultant. Now, with a decade of experience in the fashion industry, she used to work for the big guys on the high street. But these days, she's actually carved out her own type of career, and she works as a fashion retail consultant, really helping independent brands to really accelerate where they want to go and build the brand that they want. So much interesting, brilliant, useful information in this episode. So if you are looking at products or really sort of taking your online shop to the next level, this one really is for you. Also, if you don't already know, I've created a little magazine. I wanted to zhuzh up my newsletter that I send out every Monday, and it's had a makeover, and it looks much more like a magazine, sharing inspirations, strategies, tips, basically stuff that's going to really help you accelerate your week and make you feel good on that Monday morning. So if you want to subscribe and get the next one next Monday, go to nickyraby.com/magazine and you will receive it. Also, if you want more details on the podcast and the show notes, you can go to nickyraby.com/podcast or over to Instagram at Nicky Raby. Enjoy the episode. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Let's start with you. What do you do and how would you describe your job?
So I've made up my own job title.
Excellent. I can't wait to hear it.
I'm a fashion brand consultant. So I've worked in the fashion business for about 10 years in large volume retailers like Next and Asda and Miss Selfridge of Arcadia. Then I moved from buying on to supplying to be a design manager at a supplier to the high street. And then that same company launched an independent brand called New Girl Order. So I helped get that off the ground as well for about 6 months. And then I just had this gut feeling that it was the end. I was just like, I need to leave. And it was so hard to get my head around it because it almost went against every single logical thought in my brain that I have a salary and I like everybody that I work with. And I'm
ticking sensible boxes that my family would approve of.
And I should really be like at the height of my career or whatever, but something in my gut is just telling me to leave now. And it took me about 6 months to, muddle my way through all these grey thoughts that I didn't understand.
Yeah, what did that look like? Because sometimes people talk about the niggle or as you say, the gut feeling. What was that for you? Were you suddenly just a bit of a terrible employee swinging on the back of your chair? Or, did you find yourself just getting distracted by ideas? What did it look like? Because I think sometimes...
actually, I wasn't concentrating at work. And I still gave my everything, I'm a bit of a people pleaser in that way. I'm like, I heard on your live yesterday as well, you were saying the same thing.
Yes.
And So, but yeah, I was getting distracted and thinking of other things, and I sort of just wanted to do something for myself. And this is like the cheesiest story in the world, but I always tell it anyway because it's true. I'm really big into yoga. And at the end of a yoga session, I was just lying at the end, the best of it, when you lie down. And I just had this thought that I need to do my job, but on my own. And I was like, I sat bolt upright. I was like, oh my God, I've got it. And then I raced home and told my boyfriend. I was like, it's all become clear. I was like, I just need to do my job, but on my own. He was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You just need to go to bed.
Yes. But there
okay.
is such a like, oh, it's such a great feeling when you're like, I know what it is.
I figured it out. Yeah. And I just thought, I've got all this experience and there's so many independent brands that are coming up. I just need to marry the two, because these independent brands, they can get help from people that don't know what help there needs to be. For example, your mum.
Yeah.
But then there's other people who they want the help from that aren't prepared to help, because on the whole, the fashion industry isn't that nice. So to try and like get 10 minutes for a coffee with a buyer would be so valuable, but is impossible. Either because they're just crazy busy or they don't want to, like there's nothing in it for them. So
and
yeah,
there's so much you just don't know. Like if you know, just because you want to make, I don't know, a t-shirt, for example, that it's not just a case of like, oh, I know what I'd write on it and I want it to be white. There are so many different components. And I think this is what we're all learning now, is that as we go through, you know, maybe setting up our own gigs, you're not going to know all the things that you're going to need help to figure out.
Yeah, it's like, don't feel like you need to have to get everything sorted. You know, sometimes I work with women who actually are in the same position that I was, like, oh, I've got this idea of whatever it might be, you know, a bra line, and I just don't know how to get it out of my head and into real life. So I work with people like that. So, you know, how to start your own clothing brand, or building on an existing fashion brand with regards to how to find a manufacturer, maybe approaching the wholesale process, or just generally increasing profitability, because at the end of the day, business needs to make money. And, you know, regardless of how much you love it, it's a hobby otherwise, and you need to be able to make money. And I want to help you make money as well. And yeah, I'm just passionate about helping small fashion businesses thrive and grow, and using your creativity to make money. Because I think you're taught at school, you go down the arts and be this poor, sad artist, or you're a high-flying business person. Yeah, he's dead inside. Nothing in between. I don't know if it's different now, but, you know, I went to like a really academic school. And it was like, when you go to university, when you go. And I was like, if I go, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, how will I cope for studying English? I'm not very good at English or maths. And, like, what else is there? And,
well, the options were so limited right then, you know, back then rather. It was, you know, when I was sort of at school saying that I wanted to go to drama school, they I don't think they did necessarily, but it felt like they were just kind of eye-rolling me, like, what is she talking about? Who does she think she is? But I was interested to know, like, what sort of mindset stuff did you have to do on yourself in order to put yourself out there and say, this is my thing and this is what I'm doing now? Because I think sometimes things look right on paper and you have that moment of going, okay, so the maths are going to work and I know people need help with this, but then there's always this other piece that comes into play of, oh, now I've got to make it happen. What really helped you to kind of pull all those pieces together?
Oh, that's such a good question. Loads of different stuff, really. One, I would actually say, is podcasts. I binged on podcasts, like business podcasts, business books on Audible. And I used to work in London, but I actually live in Bedfordshire. So all in all, I had this 3-hour commute every single day. And I was just like, that 3 hours, I could just not be staring out the window on the train. I could be using it for something helpful.
Yeah.
And I just, I never really had a problem with like getting on Instagram or talking to the camera or whatever. You know, I did speak to a few other people who said, what's the worst thing that will happen if you speak to the camera on Instagram? You know, are you going to die? No. So go and do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And I was so nervous about going into work the next day because I was worried that everybody would just be like staring, like, what the hell did you do that for? You know, who do you think you are? And obviously, nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody's talking about you. Nobody's thinking about you.
It's so funny when it's emotional and when it's you can build all these things up in your head as to being a big thing, you know. It's like that time when you finally snog that boy and you're like, everybody knows it's written all over my face. But actually, nobody's bothered because they assumed it anyway.
Nobody cares. So I think then I was a bit like, oh, maybe I can just kind of crack on with this on my own because nobody's really paying any attention to me, but in a good way. You know, everybody's just cracking on with their own thing and they're not my customer, so that's fine. I just need to be talking to the people who need the help. And those kind of people were coming back to me. You know, I put one post on Facebook in a Facebook group saying, if anybody wants to come and meet me in Camden for an hour and talk to me about your fashion brand, let me know. And I had about 12 responses and I was like, oh, okay, this is good. You know, like if I can start working for free and build up my confidence that way, because they're not really losing anything. They're losing an hour of their day. And if they didn't find it helpful, that's fine. But most of them did.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And sometimes it was the things that were so obvious to me because I've been trained in it for 12 years.
Right.
They have no idea. And I was like, oh, I don't actually need to make this as complicated. I can just really simplify it down. And actually that was better for them because then I wasn't overwhelming them.
Yes, I always feel like this with, you know, when I was at drama school, would I want to read the complete works of Shakespeare, as in, you know, a book that is 1,200 pages long? Like, I know it's all there, but that is so overwhelming and so stifling that you just would never get round to it.
Chat about pronunciation.
Right. Exactly.
And then you're like, I can cope with that. That's like a manageable thing to focus on for that week, you know, and they go away feeling like they're bouncing and I go away feel like I'm bouncing off the walls because I've helped somebody do what I do anyway.
Yeah. And there's nothing like actually hearing from your customer what they need and where they're falling down, because certainly as well when I was putting myself out as a coach, I would write these like weird sales pages in the beginning, like, do you want to, like, it just sounded like I had a voice like Michael Johnston, you know, and that's how it kind of came across. And I was like, actually my ideal client does not want to be like, they don't want to see me in a bikini. I mean, who does really? But like, they don't want that. And actually it's only until you get face to face with them or Skype to Skype with them that you actually hear what it is that they're saying.
Yeah, it totally. And actually even yesterday I spoke to somebody and she said, I did this costing calculation on my Instagram to show how much money you're making on each garment. And I was like, oh yeah, that's easy. And I got so many messages being like, I don't get it. It's coming out wrong. Please help me. So then I thought, oh, okay, I've messed up. I thought that was easy because I've been doing it for 10 years again. So I just jumped on Instagram and was like, this is how you do it, and broke every single bit down. And then those same people messaged me saying, I get it now. And I was like, cool. And then I did another Instagram story just saying, if there's anything I ever post that you don't understand, please tell me, because I'm here to make your life easier, not overwhelm you or confuse you even more.
Yes.
And I want to be as helpful as possible, however cheesy that sounds. You know, this is why I'm doing it. I want you to grow and make money and thrive off of your business. I don't want you to have it as a side hustle. Unless you want it as a side hustle, that's fine. But if you want this to be your full-time business, I know how I can help you do that. So just shout out. And there's no such thing as a silly question or just let me know.
I love that, actually, incorporating that sense into your personal brand, whatever that might be, of being useful. Like, if I ever have those moments, if I went on an Instagram live and was like, hey guys, and like just didn't like go anywhere with it, I don't know, there's something in me that's like, why am I wasting people's time just muttering about nonsense? You know, it's about having that story and all of that. So I guess when you went from setting up your own gig, what did that process look like? How did you sort of really get the wheels in motion? How long did it take you to, you know, fully make the transition, and what really helped you in that process?
Well, it was funny, actually. Facebook groups are a huge part of my journey. I think, you know, just having other people that are in the same boat as you. They might be something totally different, you know, a photographer, but it doesn't matter because they're still trying to do something on their own and they're still in the creative industry. So I just spoke to loads of people. I went to workshops about how to build a brand. I went on social media workshops. I was like this massive sponge that just was like, I need to take everything in.
Yeah, give me everything you've got.
Overwhelm myself a little bit, but I didn't care because I knew it was the right thing to be doing. And I had like notebook after notebook after notebook.
Yes.
Like brain dumping. You know, I was like, I've got to get all of these ideas out of my brain. And then I saw something on one of the groups about a girl who was in a really similar position to me, that was launching her own website design company. And I thought, well, obviously I need a website. And she was offering them at half price to get her portfolio going. And she was really funny. She was like, do you want this website or not, sort of thing? Because if you do, like, people are messaging me. And I was like, yes, I just want my own website.
Yeah, and it's like, good actually to have that push. Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, she said, just send me over the deposit. And I think it was about £500. And I was like, this is happening. This is real, you know. And that was the thing that got me started. And her name's Kaylee Noel, by the way. So, you know, she was great. And
that's a really good point, actually, about making firm offers, because I know a lot of my clients kind of go, oh, yeah, but like, I've just had this really lovely chat, and now I feel a bit weird saying, do you want to work with me now? But it's just like, you have to put a date on it, because whenever I open up my course, guaranteed, if I say that I'm closing it at midnight and I am asleep, hopefully by midnight, I will always get an email at 5 to midnight saying, hiya, just wanted to ask a quick question. I've just come across this and I just wondered, and and people will always leave it to, and whenever I do speaking events, I did something and this lady came up to me and she was like, I've been watching your videos and thinking about coaching since 2014. And I was like, wow. And so, you know, we will all procrastinate about all these things that we were going to do. So actually, as the business owner, it's our job to go, come on then, are you keen?
Yeah, yeah. Like, come on, you know you want it because you've reached out in the first place. So there's something in you telling you to work, you know, and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I realised I needed photos for the website, so I hired a photographer. And I already knew just from listening to things about other people, you have to have good photography, and regardless of how you put yourself across online, if you're speaking to creative people, they respond to visual things.
Yes.
So I thought, I think it was in the winter as well. So I thought, I can't be doing pictures because it's dark when I get home. I won't make it nice myself. I'm a renowned terrible photographer in my friendship group. So I hired a photographer. Then I hired a copywriter as well. And because I can't write, I can talk to the hind legs of a donkey. But I really do struggle to write down what's in my brain cohesively. And I just asked for help, I guess. You know, I've outsourced things I wasn't very good at, like building a website, taking photos and writing things down. And I just thought that all those people will benefit from the business, and obviously worked with independent women.
Yeah, you're right.
who completely understood where I was coming from, and all of them were fantastic, and I honestly couldn't have done it without them. So yeah,
that's such a brilliant point about outsourcing and really putting, you know, throwing some money at things and getting things in, because
throw money at the problem.
Because I know that, you know, I'm not going to say, I kind of was like, I just had thousands of pounds that I just did not know what to do with. Like, I haven't really bootstrapped my business, and, you know, really when it's kind of got going as well, I've had a very young baby. So I mean, it's ridiculous and stupid now I say it out loud of kind of how that sort of process has been, that it has been quite full on. However, there are some things that it would take me 3 days to do something. And exactly.
And you still wouldn't be as good as them.
Totally. And I don't have that time to kind of mess around, and also I just don't have the patience. So I think sometimes it is that it's fighting that resistance to go, no, I'll just do it myself because it will be cheaper. Whereas but actually really, you have to think about your time
with those 3 days. I could spend 3 days going to networking events and talking to people, because that's what I like doing, or, you know, doing something like this and getting out there. And you've got to value your own time as well. I think people think it's cheaper, but really, if you're charging £100 a day, £200 a day, whatever it is, and it takes you 3 days, that's £600. Give that £600 to somebody who's good at it. So even though I say throw money at the problem, and that sounds a bit elitist, what I mean is I cancelled my gym membership. I started shopping at Aldi. I didn't buy anything off of ASOS. And I found the money elsewhere. I had all the money because I obviously had a job, but I just used it in a different way.
And I think so many people,
it wasn't just lying around.
Yeah, I think some people can be so flippant about how they spend money. And, you know, sometimes and this is with zero judgment, but people who are very safe in jobs spend money in a very different kind of way, because they know that guaranteed next month. And it's this thing.
It's like getting replaced all the time.
Totally. And they see this, you know, oh, well, I just went to Zara and I bought 3 tops. I mean, they're fine, but I don't love them. Whereas I've certainly got way more discerning of actually how do I spend money? Do I really love this? And sometimes it has worked the other way, where I've spent a ridiculous amount of money on something. And because as I'm adding my card details, I'm like almost throwing up down the side of my desk. I can't believe that I'm doing it. I spoke about it last night, actually, that when I joined a members club to do my one-to-one coaching, I really wanted that high-end central London lovely place, but at the time it felt, you know, I was only really getting back into work at that time, and it just felt like such a huge investment. And especially when something like technology, you're like, well, why can't I just work from home, or I'll just do it over Skype? Actually, though, like having a nice place means I get a higher quality of clients, and people get better results because they're all in, and all of that stuff. It's really fascinating, that sort of, you know, reinventing how you think about things. I couldn't agree more.
I just think you choose wisely what you're spending your money on. And I thought about, maybe I should put a video on my website and hire a videographer, but I was like, actually, maybe that's stage 2, you know. So I sort of prioritized where I needed it being spent. So like I said, a website was the main thing that I needed. And now I'm sort of further in, I'm starting to look at SEO kind of people, so there's no point having a website if nobody's coming to it. So getting out there technically as well there's a bit of a boring side of things to it now. So I've done all the fun things like colour palettes and pictures. now my to-do list doesn't look quite as exciting, but it's all part of the journey. Definitely.
I love that you say that about phase 1, phase 2, is that sometimes, I like to think of my website as being something living and breathing like a plant, for example, but you always want it to have another season of flowering, or, you know, maybe there's going to be a weird branch that goes off this way, that it's never kind of like, right, I've watered you now and you're done. That is it. Because I think also as well, that can stop us from making progress of like, well, it's never going to be perfect, so what's the point anyway? Whereas you have to leave those kind of toddler ways that put them to the side. What do you...
I do hear a lot of people actually saying, oh, you know, I'm a perfectionist.
Yes.
And I'm not at all. I am a little bit slapdash, you know. I'll just go out there and give it a go. And I think that's something, going back to the mindset thing, I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? You know? I'll just go back to my job. That's the worst thing, and I like it anyway, so let's try.
That's so important. Actually, it can be really sort of, perfection can be that procrastination, that it gives you that excuse, well, it's not going to be perfect, or it's not going to be this. And certainly with the podcast, when I started it, I'm sure if I listen back to the early episodes, then you know there were things that I could improve on, but you have to get it going and you have to get it moving and shaking. What do your clients sort of really struggle with? Because I know there are lots of creative brands that listen to this podcast that maybe sell products, or if we kind of focus on, I know we talk about services quite a lot, but if we think about products, where do people sort of fall down, or where do they kind of become a bit unstuck?
Oh, yeah. I'd say the biggest thing with fashion in particular, just firstly, is finding a manufacturer. But thinking about it out loud, that could actually help with anybody. And building on supplier relationships as well. I think you go on Google and find a factory and you talk to somebody over email, and then you send something overseas and you don't see it again. Whereas there's so much more to it than that. You know, you're ideally, you want to be working with this person forever. That's the way you've got to look at it. And you don't want to be doing this process over and over and over again. You're like, oh, they messed it up. So I sort of teach people about bulletproofing your order from beginning to end, and meeting people in real life. I know we spoke about this before. Just talking to somebody face to face is invaluable. And usually people start by making a product themselves and then outsource it.
Yes.
So it feels really scary to hand this over. You know, it's always been your thing. And then you've got to give it to this horrible person overseas that you're paying money to.
Who's going to be like that guy in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And what's his name? You know, he's got that weird black hat and he kind of is always hiding behind a door with his raised eyebrows. He's going to take all your money.
Your product away from you, and you're paying him to do that. It's such a weird mindset to get your head around. So I think, you know, go and talk to them. How about that? Have a Skype conversation. Do you like them? Get to know them. Do you trust them? And asking all the right questions as well to make yourself not look like a novice. Because
so what are those questions, I guess? So say, for example, somebody wanted, I'm going to have like a fashion brand by the end of this episode. No, but like I wanted sort of, because I read from another client actually the other day that she'd sort of done something with a manufacturer, and then, you know, suddenly there were hidden costs and all kinds of things. So say, for example, I have a t-shirt and that I want to make and manufacture. What sort of things should I be asking somebody?
So there's two people that you need to speak to. One is a fabric mill and one is the factory. And it's very rare that those two things are the same, the building or company. And again, people are like, oh, you know, the factory said they want to send it out to get it printed, so I don't want to do that. I want to find someone where it's all under one roof. But that's very unlikely, you know, especially in the UK as well. There might be somebody who makes the yarn, then there'll be somebody who makes the fabric, then there'll be somebody who cuts the fabric, then there'll be somebody who sews the garment, and then they'll send that out to be packed. So it's very normal for somebody to specialize in one thing. In the same way that we do, they do that in manufacturing as well. And you've got to see it that they then are specialists in what they're doing. So don't be scared about the fact that it might have to go to 2 or 3 places.
Yes.
So the first thing you want to be doing is finding a fabric to make your garment. So there's lots of fabric fairs that you can go to. Usually they're in either Olympia or the London Design Centre in Islington.
Yes.
So you can go and ask, where do you produce your fabric? Do you hold stock? Who else do you work with? Can I get a fabric hanger, or do I have to sort of order and get it posted to me? Do you charge for sampling cloths, and then is it refundable against an order? What is your lead time? Do you have test results and wash care instructions? And what are your minimum order quantities? Because that's, when going back to your first question, that's the biggest thing that people struggle with, is getting somebody to take them seriously if they're not prepared to make thousands of units, you know,
Right.
which we've seen over the years. So I'm a huge believer in bringing manufacturing back to the UK. These people are so talented. There's no language barrier. You can go and watch it. I'm working with an influencer at the moment who's going to video her product being made for her YouTube channel.
Oh, how
and it's going to be an hour drive. Yeah, how satisfying is that? And if you're sending it off to China because it might be 50p cheaper, is it really worth it? Or is it worth paying that extra 50p and going to see it being made?
And the YouTube
really
needs
good
this stuff.
Yeah, and so yeah, seeing it being made is like invaluable. And that's a sales pitch there in itself, is that it's made in England. People
Right.
completely see the value in that. And it's just nice to support your own country. You know, everyone else does it, so why don't England?
Yes, and that sense of going in and trying to... I heard this brilliant thing the other day, which I'm sure I'm going to mess up, but that sense of not going into a room saying, I hope they like me, rather than thinking, no, not saying, I hope they like me, but
Yeah.
you hope that you like them. And I think sometimes when people are moving outside of their comfort zone, sometimes there is a bit of a weird insecurity or chip on their shoulder that they kind of approach these things like, oh, you're going to rip me off. Right. Okay. Yeah. Is this even going to work? And actually just being open and having a conversation, it really does work.
Yeah, and sometimes they might rip you off, you know, but
Yes.
that's why you've got to go and meet them and gauge that reaction as early as possible. Because one of my clients said, how do I know whether to trust a factory? And I said, I can't do that for you. You've got to go there and meet them and figure it out yourself. You know, you'll know if you trust them or not. So think of it like any other process that you go through in your life with your friendships or who you put your car into your servicing with. Think of it like that, and you know what sort of process you go through in your mind that, yes, I'm prepared to give that person money. There's that theory of knowing someone, liking someone, trusting someone to get them to buy from you. It's the same sort of thing in reverse.
And knowing what your own set of credentials are, of like what is really important to you and where...
Your brand values.
Yeah, your brand values, and where you're willing to cut some slack and where you're not, and what's really important, and all of that sort of, you know, they'll say it about dating sometimes, you know, those smoothio guys who sort of open doors for you, and then they're on their knee with a with a rose between their teeth, and I'm like, oh no, that's not for me. So I think it's just giving yourself permission to really connect with that, like what's important, where are you going to potentially have wiggle room.
And the other thing is, so let's say you found a manufacturer at either a trade show that you've been to, or and there's these online directories that you can go on rather than being on Google. And I've written a whole blog post on this that we could maybe link.
I would love to. Yeah,
like 5 steps on how to find or how to start a fashion brand. I've not quite worked out the title yet, but it's going on this week. And the thing that I try and get across to people is that it's your responsibility to make this order right. And I think a lot of people think it's their responsibility, and it is to an extent, but only if you give them the right information, because it's your idea in your head. So you've got to get that out of your head onto paper, into a factory. And if that feels scary, then you need to hire a designer, because a factory won't be able to work with a photo. You can't go in there with a photo and say, I want to make this. You've got to have a technical instruction pack with a line drawing and measurements and photo references and maybe a physical sample for reference, so that they completely understand it. And especially if you're going abroad as well, because you've got to remember they may or may not speak English. The person you're speaking to might speak English, but the person in the pattern room might not. So a line drawing with measurements on, you can understand that regardless of what language you speak.
Yes.
So that's your responsibility to get that. And if you don't know how, you need to hire a designer. And then once you've got your sample and you're happy with your sample and the fit of it, you've then got to send an order confirmation with every single detail you can imagine.
Yes.
It's got to be so detailed that you're borderline patronising, but you would rather that than assuming that they know what you're talking about. Because
you're so right. Like those IKEA things when you're like, what? I just do this? What? But where's the other page? I've missed that. And, you know. That's
a really good analogy, yes. You would rather them patronise you, wouldn't you, if you're putting some flat pack furniture together and then you know you've got it right. Rather than, you've got it handled, don't worry about it, I'll let you get on with it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down. That's a great analogy.
Help yourself to that. Yeah, I did make the IKEA kitchen for Oscar's last birthday, and I'm sure parents out there will kind of know the one that I mean. But it was one of those like, oh, it'll be fine. It'll just take me an hour. Like 3.5 hours later, I was still going, sorry, what is this? Where is this going? And yeah, exactly.
And maybe a little bit of swearing.
But yes, there was a lot, and a lot of wine too.
That helps.
I also wanted to ask you along the lines of, how do you I guess your clients, you sort of mentioned that sense of like building your confidence so you can work on your creativity. What things are really good for keeping you buoyant and sort of believing it? Because sometimes I guess if somebody's saying like the lead time is 2 months or whatever, that it feels like it's in the distance or it's not real yet. Or sometimes, especially if people have had a really sort of serious corporate job and they've kept this little art project hidden for a long time, it can be quite bold to reveal it to the world. What do you sort of suggest to your clients that will kind of help them really step into this new zone?
Yeah, well, there's 2 points in that, I think. One of them is if the factory does tell you the lead time is 2 months, that please don't not do anything for 2 months. We're all about the analogies today, but this analogy is like building a house. If a builder said to you come back in 2 months and your house will be done, you'd laugh.
Yes.
You'd be like, no way, I'm going to hire a project manager to manage this thing and find out when, I don't know how to build a house, but when the bricks are arriving or when the windows are arriving. You've got to fit it all in. And it's the exact same thing as building a garment. There's people in the industry who are production managers. That is their job title. So that's your job title for that part of the process. So you've got to ring out the factory and say, when is the fabric arriving? When is it being cut? When is it being sewn? When is it being packed? And give me some dates within that 2 months. And you put those dates in your calendar and you phone them on those dates. And if they haven't done it, you know earlier on whether it's going to be late or not. And especially if you've got a wholesale order with a buyer waiting for you at the end of it, and you ring up the factory on the, at the end of the 2 months going, oh, is it ready now? And they're like, oh, no, we haven't even started it yet because I didn't think you were interested. You've not phoned us,
Oh, yes. And sometimes as well, especially female clients that I have, it's that like, oh, I don't want to seem pushy, or I don't want to seem like I'm pushy. Kind of...
Go for it.
Yeah, like you have to chase that and go, hi, I'm available, because otherwise, if it becomes competitive for their time, then they say, oh, well, I'm just going to work on this because they seem really keen.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I was all about the blog posts yesterday. I wrote 12 tips about how to combat self-doubt in the fashion industry, funnily enough. So the big thing is just sort of to write everything down. I think in your head, what's in your head is way more mean than the real you. And then once you've written it down, read it out loud, and you'll be shocked at how horrible and most likely untrue that is. So I don't know. So one thing that I thought about, like I said, with the Instagram stories, you know, people will think, who do you think you are, putting yourself out there as a person of expertise in your field?
Yeah, the imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah, and then I was like, well, but I am.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody can take my experience away from me. And I always say to people, it's not boastful if it's true.
Right.
If you have worked in the industry for 10 years, then that's a fact.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be those basic things of, you know, you might have a parent that will go, I don't know why my battery is draining on my iPhone, and I'm not an iPhone expert, but it's like, it's because you've got 49 windows open and like you've got this Bluetooth thing on, and it's sometimes like you just need to be the key piece in that of actually knowing you know the fact and the other person doesn't.
Yeah, and that's cool. And then sort of think, would you say those things to a child? And the answer is probably no, because they'd cry and have a meltdown.
Right.
So don't say it to yourself.
Yeah.
And when a child's starting to walk and they fall down, you wouldn't go, you idiot, you're never going to be able to walk again. Obviously, don't say that. No.
Yeah, I look at old videos of me, like when Oscar was learning to walk, and I'm like, the voice is just so cringe on the videos, because I'm like, come on, you can do it, off you go. And, you know, I always would speak to him, you know, he's starting to become interested in, I mean, I'm not professing he's some sort of Matilda child or anything like that, but he's starting to recognise letters and talk about words and things, and I'm never going to go, no, you got it wrong. You know, I'm always saying it with kindness.
Yeah, so don't do it to yourself. Just treat yourself like the person that's in your head is like your inner child. And if you wouldn't say it to a child, please don't say it to yourself. And write down all the facts as well that support this thing that you've written down. And I'm not talking like, I feel this, you know, like this is true because, and I would guess that 80 to 90% of the time you won't be able to write anything. There's no evidence of this whatsoever. You've made it up. But the good thing is that if you've made it up in a negative way, you can also spin that around to be a positive.
Oh, I love that. I love it. Got to, and also you've got to find that evidence to back yourself in terms of like, well, I've done this before and I've got this strength and I can ask this person, and, you know, really connect with those open questions of like the what, the how, you know, why, all of that sort of stuff. Like, actually, how am I going to make this happen? I've got one final question for you, which is where would you like to be in 5 years' time in business and in life?
Oh gosh,
I'm throwing that. We're recording this at 8:30 in the morning, so yeah, I'm throwing out all the big guns deep before you go away.
Yeah, I am really bad at planning for the future, and my boyfriend is even worse, to the point where I can't even ask him what should we do tomorrow, because he'll be like, I don't know, we'll figure it out tomorrow. And I've actually taken on quite a lot of that, because I really believe in just being in the here and now. And the one thing I would say is that I'm still doing something in this remit of working by myself, helping other people, working with independent brands, because I really, really do believe that they're the future. The next generation, Gen Z, so your child's generation, are going to backlash against these huge corporate brands. They're going to be quite a hippie generation. We want to work with people, not with brand names.
Yes.
So when you're saying we as a company, start putting I if it is just you, because people respect you so much more for that. If it is just you, they know they're buying from you, and a person is behind that brand, and they will connect with that so much more.
Oh, that's so useful in terms of about pages as well. Like, if it's you and you've written your about page, say I, because because say I. But it is those things like, it's so cheesy if I go, Nicky trained at Mountview, and it's like, people know I've written it. I have.
Yeah, like, is it the owner of the company and you're just an employee? No, you're the owner, but it tricks my mind into thinking you're not.
Yes.
So say I. And if it feels a bit weird to write that, start with the Nicky is this, Nicky is that, and then go back and change it at the end and change it to I. Because sometimes it is quite hard to get it onto paper if you're saying that. But
definitely. And with those things, I always write like 3 times the amount that I need to write. I get everything out and then I cut it out, because otherwise if you're like, say who you are in 100 words or less, you're like, ooh, this feels...
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, don't be afraid to brain dump.
Yeah, definitely. If people want to come and find out more and what you're all about and read the blogs, I'll link them all in the show notes as well if you want to send them to me. Where should they go?
So my website is elizabethstiles.co.uk. I'm not related to Harry Styles, so it's Stiles, not Y, unfortunately.
Imagine how rich you'd be.
I know. And the weird thing is, I do actually look a bit like him as well. So.
Fantastic.
Blue eyes and brown curly hair.
Brilliant.
So yeah, on my Twitter it's eStylesUK, Facebook is Elizabeth Styles UK, and Instagram is Elizabeth Styles UK.
Fantastic. Oh, what a great guest you've been. Everybody's going to be like, right, I'm making it, I'm doing it, and you've offered so much value. So thank you so much. Yes. It's been great.
Oh, thanks for having me.
No worries. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.